Just give it a couple of seconds just to let the software catch up. So, okay. Anthony, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jack. I'm happy to be here. Very excited.
Yeah. So for those that watch the Tech 45 podcast or listen to it that don't already know you, um, if you could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah. So Anthony Amos. I'm a military kid, so I'm from all over the place. Recently got my master's over at George Mason in public policy. I do a lot of volunteer work with different organizations, which I know we'll get into a little bit later. But I'm a gamer. I love playing football and basketball. And I'm a huge nerd as well into anime, but I also just love researching policy, and that's also why I love school so much. And I currently work for Fairfax County government and local government. So I come from a background of land use, policy, taxes, stormwater. And while it may not sound that interesting, I think government is fun, and I think we could show that to people too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, having kind of a fun outlook towards government is important because you want the people to engage with their local government and help shape the policies that will, eventually hopefully make a positive improvement in their everyday life. And I think local government engagement and local community service, like you've been engaged in your own life, is a really important place to start. Um, so if you don't mind, I mean, what kind of drew you to some of the community engagement that you've been a part of here in Northern Virginia in Fairfax? Do you mind telling us like a little bit more about kind of how you got involved, how you learned about it?
Yeah, no, I've been volunteering for a long time. Back in high school in Germany, actually, I did a lot of volunteer work and got volunteered the year awards through teen ambassador programs and all that fun stuff. In Hawaii, I did a lot of volunteer work with the Special Olympics. I started my own organization, Leaves of Opportunity. That was fun, and did a lot of poetry nights and Dead Poet Society nights. I love that movie. So when I got here, I knew immediately that I wanted to get as involved as possible. And that really kicked off. I actually used to be an escape room manager over at Fairfax Corner. And during the pandemic, we were struggling. So we joined the Central Fairfax Chamber. That's how I met Jennifer Rose. And that opened up a lot of avenues for me to get involved, volunteer. So I'm their government and philanthropy committee chairs. Um, so I've drafted policy for the chamber, but also organized events like the Valor Awards and First Responders Donation Drive, where each year for First Responders Day, we get some non-perishable items and we take them to the local fire stations and police stations in the city. Um, so that was really my first soiree. And then it kind of expanded to League of Women Voters, NAACP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the Arc of Nova, and to my partner's dismay, I probably do way more than I should, but I love it. I love it so much.
I hear you. That is a lot. I mean, I know your plate's full, and I've talked to other people here in Fairfax that know you, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Anthony's always at this event and that event, and like I always see him over there. He's always helping out that part of the city." So that seems to be a common theme in your life is looking actively seeking out ways to give back to your community. And I always encourage my friends to, there's sometimes it can be easy to get pulled into, all of this turmoil in the world through the media cycle, and a lot of people, kind of myself included, I fail to forget that there's people, 1 or 2 miles away from your house that can use your support and your unique gifts. Um, and I always encourage my friends to seek out opportunities to help in their backyard. You
Yeah.
can't always help out someone suffering 2-3 thousand miles away, but there's a lot of people in the local community that could benefit from people's volunteer work.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about this area too, is that there's always something going on. A lot of churches do a lot of great work. Like the church I have, they do hypothermia prevention each year for the homeless community. You have Feed My Starving Children. They usually do a meal pack where they pack meals for kids suffering from starvation from around the world. And it's really just getting these opportunities to people because there's something going on every day. So if you work on weekdays like I do, sometimes having something in the evening or early morning or on weekends is better, but also just having that healthy rotation. Most of the time it's just people aren't aware of it. And volunteerism really was starting to taper off pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic really dramatically lowered it. So we need to allocate more resources into getting our volunteers back.
Yeah, agreed. I've heard that sentiment shared with some of the nonprofits that my family supports. It's it's a personnel shortage as well. But yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you too is I know it's shaped the way I view things like outwardly. Your time growing up around like a military culture, and you're kind of seeing a unique cross section of people from all over the country, honestly, and they're in the military or that are raising their family in like in the military culture. And I saw that firsthand, and I would say, that certainly that has a unique impact on on someone. I think in a positive way.
Hmm.
But did growing up in that military environment, shape the way that view local community, or that kind of the way that you view the world from your own perception?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, whenever people ask me, it's like, "Hey, so where'd you grow up, or what do you consider home?" I told them the army, just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you end up all over the place. But the beautiful thing about it is you get to experience all these different cultures, these different mechanisms that are in place. From for example, I was in Germany and Hawaii, but I had friends in Japan, in why am I blanking? Bahrain, Singapore. So there's places everywhere where you can just really get involved in the local community, learn different languages, explore different parts of world history. And honestly, in my heart of hearts, I wish that every single kid in the U.S. had the opportunity to travel somewhere outside of the country. It's really a phenomenal experience, and it makes you a better person, in my opinion.
yeah. I agree. I think if you are able to gain perspective and see how other people live in a foreign country, spend any sort of significant time in a country outside the U.S. or outside of wherever you're from, I think it can make an immense impact on your point of view. It can shift your kind of the way that you view the world, and
Exactly.
yeah, that's it for me
I
for
mean,
sure.
I would say the same, like for Hawaii too. Like to your point, it doesn't even have to be outside of the country.
Yep.
I mean, just going to Hawaii, there's a big difference between going there for a few days and living there for 4 years. And I learned so much there, the good and the bad. Where they have a beautiful culture, you can really learn their cosmology and the importance of nature to them. Even the exchange of breath has a story behind it. But then you also go there and you see the gentrification, where the Hawaiians are all pushed towards the west side of the island. Or where you recently learned that as of last year, Las Vegas has more Hawaiians than Hawaii does.
Wow.
Yeah. So it teaches you the good and the bad, but you can only really learn that from prolonged exposure and actually interacting with the native people.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I think that's one of the things I really immediately liked about you is when I first met you. You're always looking for ways to improve and give back to the community, and I can't help but I don't really want to wait any longer, but like I want to plug your campaign because you are running for public office, and I think it's important to like when I hear about your plan for some of the local objectives that you want to work with the community to accomplish. It makes me really excited about the future, and so I wanted to share. I think these are really unique goals that oftentimes people don't think about. Um, but anybody can access your website. It's very easy to find. Anthony T Amos .org. This is slash issues. But I like these two. These first two are significant to me because I think this is a really good goal to have as a community, especially for people that are looking to get back on their feet and to pursue a life of getting plugged back into the job market. Learning how to be able to be self-sustaining on their own and get their own place. This is
Absolutely.
critical. This is like step one. I don't think this doesn't often get brought up. I don't think.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, part of it is that it's not the quote unquote sexiest topic.
Yeah.
But it's very significant. I mean, for example, part of where this came from was also my experience with the homelessness, not just here in the city, but Hawaii actually was number one in homelessness in the country. So I worked a lot with the homeless population over there, and while housing is a big part of it, so is financial education and developing good habits like banking practices, because that's what drives long-term stability. And when you look at our prison population, because I also did a lot of research on recidivism, it's not just low English literacy rates and reading levels, but it's also a lack of financial education.
Yep.
So I wanted to take that, and it's both preventative uh, to break any form of the school to prison pipeline, but also just good for, I mean, students, for the homeless population, for older adults who are living off of passive income, learning how to do investments, and it. I think it's extremely important that we need to focus more on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think this doesn't often get brought up, but there are resources out there that people can connect with here.
Exactly. I mean, like
Yeah.
Bright Pass, they have a financial literacy center,
Yep.
and we should be doing more to advocate for that and get them connected with our school system.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I mean, your environmental bullets are fantastic, and they're not hypothetical. Like they're all actionable items. Like they're all like things that the community can actually do. Like we can actually do as a city. We can take
Yeah.
steps. Yeah, this is a long term approach. I feel like.
Yeah, and I didn't want to run and then just kind of have like a bunch of vague terms. I really wanted to kind of spell out for people what I think we could do. And a lot of that was I spent hours and hours researching what other jurisdictions do around the world, in different cities in the US, but also in Copenhagen and some countries in Asia. And I mean, there are some phenomenal ideas that a city of of our size and of our plethora of what I would say are financial resources could really accomplish. And a big part for me is that I wanted to focus on programs that we could implement that would not significantly increase people's tax burdens. So I wanted to focus on ideas that were more affordable and actionable or could pay itself off over time. And so, like a carbon rewards program, they do that, I believe, in Chicago, or I might be blanking on that, Chicago or Oakland, where small businesses will work with the city government. And let's say that you buy an electric vehicle, you decide to go volunteer your time in a park, you can actually take that and incentivize it where you qualify for discounts around the city with small businesses that optionally participate in this program. And it's ideas like that that can really motivate people to improve their carbon practices, but you could apply that to volunteer programs like volunteer banking. It's really endless.
Yeah, I like these. These are all good initiatives. Um, yeah, and then I really like your one on community building too.
Yeah, honestly, community building might be my number one, to be honest
Yeah,
with you.
this is
Um,
really important. This is what makes a place like Fairfax City like just a really magical, like a really nice place to live, and raise a family and get to know your neighbors. And I think this is if you have this, you have something really special.
Completely agree. And I mean, I think behind every good form of government is a strong community. It's a community filled with volunteers, with students who are engaged. And I mean, I would say right now we have a good amount, but we could increase it by a significant margin. And there's a few different ideas, like for example, I put the biannual parks trail there, where city council could just set up a day where every 2 years or so we do a walk through of different parks and trails, see what people love, see what needs to be improved and maintained. And I actually got that idea while I was doing petition signatures, because I was over at Thace Park doing a cleanup of a stream, and someone was walking by, and I stopped and I was like, "Hey, do you want to sign my petition?" And they're like, "Yeah, could you do something about getting a staircase right over there to connect our community to Thace Park, and do like a natural staircase?" And I took note of that, and I decided, like, let's make that a policy position. Let's walk through parks together, and we could see what the community wants and desires.
Yeah, I love that. That's getting out there in person and talking to people in the community and actually hearing about what potential infrastructure projects like that in particular that would benefit them. So, but yeah, I'll include notes on where to find this for people. But I think it's really the way you laid this out was really clear, actionable, and it was very specific, which I appreciated. That was cool the way you did that. So yeah,
Thank you. I think people get bogged down in the general philosophies of things, and I just kind of wanted more of. I wouldn't call it a day one plan, but
yeah,
it's more.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's things that I hope to hit over time. Also, I do want to make sure to shout out that Jack, you're also running for city council.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So I
We both
wanted to.
are.
Yeah, we both are. So and it's been a fun process so far, but I love this kind of engagement. This is great. These are the types of conversations I want everyone to be having.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Um, so now that you've been involved in community efforts across the city, you've been looking at getting it more involved in city government and becoming an elected official, becoming really a decision maker. What are some of the I guess what are some of the improvements that that we could work together at as like a city together to improve the city over time? I mean, what can you think of? Any like long term goals um, that you could foresee would be beneficial, like to the city long term? Over a period of 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I guess that's a really good question. I'd probably say my top three is one, a more broadened transportation study, specifically surrounding all the places where we can develop,
Yep.
because we're looking at redeveloping Fairfax Circle and Camp Washington through our small area plans and adding housing. So I want to see how that's going to impact, for example, Blenheim Boulevard, Main Street, the Old Town area, and see how and where we can mitigate or provide alternative options for transportation to alleviate some of the impact that's incoming. Um, I would say a workforce housing ordinance. The county has it. We have an affordable housing ordinance, but we don't have a portion that's dedicated specifically to workforce. And I'd like to see that implemented to really assist our young teachers, police, fire, municipal workers, so they can actually live in the city rather than having to commute from other jurisdictions, which most of them do right now. And for me, that's just not okay. And I would say I'm actually, I don't know if I think I'm the only one or one of two of the candidates that actually lives in affordable housing right now. And what I would like to see is an affordable housing renovation fund. While we're building a lot of affordable housing, I wouldn't say a lot, but while we're building affordable housing, we're not renovating the housing that we already have or taking care of it. So a lot of it is older. For example, Leighton Hall, where I'm at, I mean that's a 1950s, 1960s project,
Yep.
and while I do appreciate the pricing for sure, I mean there's rats, mice, bed bugs, name your pick, of what you can. And setting aside a fund or a lot of the projects that are developed, for example, like with housing projects, say can do, instead of building affordable housing, they can do like a cash payment, maybe even taking a portion of that cash payment and putting it into this renovation fund to fix up affordable housing later. That way we don't just have sitting money that's not spent.
Yeah, I do like that. I think it's important to keep up, and a lot of buildings have either a pretty clear lifespan, call it 100 years, or you need either major renovation or needs to be redeveloped, like you said. Yeah, I'm very much aware of that for sure. Um, I think and having growth like that is good for the community. I think being able to have more affordable options. So if someone hypothetically, wanted to come to go to school here, let's say they went to go get their degree at George Mason, they could start their career here. You know, where would they live? Assuming they could, find housing within the bracket that they want to pay
Yeah,
here in Fairfax City. I think it's important to have options like that. So
exactly. And it's just ultimately it's good for the economy too, because
I think so.
you want the foot traffic. You want
Yeah.
people to live and spend their money here instead of living somewhere else, and then they come work here and they go spend their money somewhere else. Um, so it's a good, it's a delicate balance that you have to strike. It is difficult.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have like a couple of like linchpin, like really like good size employers, mixed with some smart, redevelopment or development of affordable housing units in the city. Um, but I don't know. I don't know enough about like zoning, current zoning in Fairfax City and Fairfax County to know, is some of the zoning currently, out of date with what's needed for the future. So I've heard that from some of my friends that work in communities across the East Coast, and they said that sometimes the zoning is just kind of outdated for the trajectory of their city or their county. But
That's always a fun conversation. I mean, some people will tell you that zoning isn't restrictive enough. Like for example, we have Alexandria and Arlington where they got rid of single family zoning, but then you also have the opposite side of it where you'll have it where a lot of the regulatory burden, or where a lot of the issues with affordability comes from overregulation from our zoning ordinances.
okay,
So you have that aspect of it as well. And how do you balance that? I think you need an extensive conversation on it to see what people want.
yep,
I don't see Fairfax City becoming Tyson's at any point, but also, I mean, saying that we're never going to develop isn't feasible either. Um, but yeah, but it's I'm one of those that thinks land use and zoning is fun. So uh,
nice.
I just think that we need to get the community involved in it and really break down how zoning works because it can get really complicated.
Yeah, agreed. It seems complicated to me. Um, yeah, and what else too, man? Because I feel like Fairfax City is in a unique spot where like we have our own schools, namely Catherine Johnson and Fairfax High,
Yeah.
but yet we have this contract with the public, with the county schools with
Mm.
FCPS. Um, what can we do with regards to like any collaborative efforts with the county? What are some things in the near term that you see as opportunities to strengthen that partnership, if you will, or have it be mutually beneficial for Fairfax City residents and maybe other county programs that we can leverage that are available to us?
Yeah, there's so what I would say to that is there are a lot of things coming up that if the city had more of a voice in, we could be stronger beneficiaries. So, I mean, first thing that comes to mind is transportation projects. For
Yep.
example, you have the judicial complex. We really want that Second Street connection, and that would help alleviate a lot of the traffic. But how far out is that going to be? Are they going to develop housing on the judicial complex first before we get the Second Street connection? Which I think the city does not want. We want that connection first and infrastructure first, and then you build the housing on top of it. You also have near the Camp Washington area where they're developing housing near the NRA building off of Germantown Road near Pender Drive. Um, Getting that connection from Pender Drive to Germantown Road to alleviate a lot of the traffic off of Route 50, providing another alternative to cut through. How far out is that project going to be? And that is a county project, but if we can get that connection to become more of a priority or at least a first step, that would help with our traffic concerns. There's also a lot of commissions and boards that overlap between the city and the county. For example, I actually serve on the George Mason Advisory Board as a city appointee, but that involves county elected officials, city elected officials, George Mason representatives, and there's opportunities there for us to work on collaborative projects. But it's not just that commission; there's multiple. Fairfax County just formed a Veterans and Military Families Commission. We should have a city appointee on that commission because we have a lot of military members in this community, and we have people that work over at Fort Belvoir. So I think making sure that we have a voice there too. So it's really just someone needs to go out and tell the county like, hey, we should be included in this conversation because it directly impacts us too.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense what you said. Yeah, I knew for sure there was, either a lot of current positions or, potential city appointee positions like that. So that's really helpful to know. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think too. I mean, I really like your concept of, looking at best practices from cities, maybe comparable to Fairfax City, either in size or growth trajectories, or within our proximity to a major metropolitan area like DC.
Absolutely.
Um, and I like, you've mentioned a couple of really forward-thinking cities and policies that they've enacted to, hopefully make the city more livable,
Hmm.
um, maybe easier to posture for economic growth. And I think Fairfax City it could be postured to do the same thing in certain regards. Um, and I like the idea of looking at ways that we could alleviate, traffic in Fairfax City, either through different traffic pattern avenues or different traffic patterns throughout the city, or maybe
Yeah.
additional walking and biking paths. It's not an easy problem to solve though, because they're
No.
not they're going to continue to build housing in Fairfax and then also west of Fairfax too. So
Yeah, it's one of those problems that's only going to get worse. So
I
you'll need to
know
forever adjust for it. I
it's
mean,
true.
we don't have that much land, so at a certain point, we'll be filled up. At
Yeah,
least that's what
yeah,
one would suspect. But I
I
mean,
know it.
yeah, keeping up with it is going to be tough.
I agreed. Um, yeah. What else is on your mind as far as kind of like your life's mission right now is so clearly defined by not only like your family um, and your goals there with your own family, but also your goals with serving and giving back to the community. What are some other things that you wanted to share? Um, Either ways that people themselves can take steps towards giving back to their community, or ways that people can connect with you and your team,
Yeah.
and maybe get plugged into some of the stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, to connect with us, you could always reach out to our email, contact us through our website, reach out to our phone number, 202-798-3210. But I mean, in terms of the organizations, I mean, pretty much every organization that uses any form of volunteer work, they're looking for people. Oh yeah, our volunteer page. Thank you. But I mean, every organization's looking for people. I mean, NAACP, they're doing great work with, for example, studying air quality along Route 1 or near affordable housing projects to see if there's a difference between air quality there and single family homes. Uh, and that's easy to get involved in, and you don't have to pay to get involved. I will mention that because I know some people get worried that being a part of these organizations require monetary impacts, which some do. But I mean, for example, Rotary Club, they host events and they're easy to get involved with, and they have chapters all over the world. Uh, it's really just making connections and networking.
Yep.
I mean, I formed a LinkedIn account. LinkedIn, super useful,
Oh,
super
nice.
useful for this thing. I formed a LinkedIn account and I had people contact me through there asking me to volunteer with them. Including, for example, like Homestretch, which they do a lot of housing for domestic violence victims. Reset 180, they do human trafficking impacts and mitigating human trafficking and illicit massage businesses. But you also got, I got contacted by the Fairfax Rotary Club on there and ended up joining them. And they do a lot of great work with backpacking, doing mission work, or even at your local church. If you go to church or see someone else's church and they're doing events, it's usually open invitation. You don't even have to attend there. So there's plenty of opportunities. It's just taking the time to really find it or contacting someone who knows about them, because usually someone does.
Yeah. No, I agree. Those are all the same ways I would recommend people getting plugged into their community like that. Um, yeah, you brought up the victims of human trafficking. There's a lot of national organizations that are starting to pop up, in the last 5, 10 years, that are specifically trying to work with the victims of human trafficking, but also trying to find the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And it's some dark stuff, man. That's a topic that people, including myself, didn't really understand, just how common it was in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean sex trafficking is the most common, but it also has strong overlaps with labor trafficking too, because they often go hand in hand. Like the big thing around here in this area is really illicit massage businesses, or IMBs. And I mean, Fairfax County alone has over 100 that were identified by FCPD. Yeah, in a report that was done, I think, right before the pandemic hit. So it's likely worse now, to be honest with you. And organizations like Reset 180, they really stay on top of it. They actually go to those businesses and provide cards or language or materials in different languages for people to read, to be able to report or to get out of their situation. Because a lot of that has overlap with recidivism and homelessness too. Is really the steps are housing, providing a support structure, because a lot of people are brought here and then they don't know what to do, and they're relying on these systems that are in place. And so I've done a lot of work in studying human trafficking and the hospitality industry, especially. Usually, that's where the first connections happen, and also labor trafficking. But I mean, we're right by an international airport, near major roadways along the East Coast. We're in a very financially wealthy area, so this would be characterized as a prime hotspot for trafficking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't think I made that connection, but the more I learn about it, I mean, the more I unfortunately learn about how prevalent it is, and how it is concentrated in you know more well-to-do areas. So
Yeah, and it's it's a shame. Uh, just deplorable stuff, man. To the fact that you could do that to another person just really boggles my mind. I'm a peace, love, and positivity guy, so just knowing that, knowing that's out there and having seen it, it's rough.
yeah, I hear you. What other I'm really getting to like kind of like the nuts and bolts of like your life's work. Really, I mean, this is like kind of like your life's work is
It's a
some of
way
these
to think about it
organizations.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good though. It's a good thing. I think you're already building an incredible legacy for the future, and then you're not just talking about a lot of these issues that are important to talk about, but you're actually taking action and taking steps towards helping in these specific areas that you've mentioned before, which I think is important for any leader in the community, in a business or in a government role, for that leader being willing to actually do the work themselves, and that's a really good leadership characteristic that I feel like you have, which is great. Um, what other things are really important to you? Like we've mentioned a lot in a short amount of time, but what else is key to like your life's work or your life's mission right now?
Well, maybe it's because of like my family's military background, or just that I've always kind of been infatuated with the idea of our democracy, but I just love the United States. I really do. And I think that the philosophy of it to be able to bring people together, regardless of their cultural background, and turn them into neighbors where they can get along with each other is really important to me. So, I mean, the number one thing I want to do in my life is help people. And I also want to be able to restore the idea of respect and being able to disagree but still love each other. As cheesy as that may sound, that's just me as a person. And part of that is also security concerns. So, for example, I've also done work on rare earths and lithium in the renewable energy market, because a lot of it is relying on rare earths like lithium that's largely controlled by foreign adversaries. So, seeing how we can mitigate those through technologies like lithium ion battery recycling, which is becoming more prevalent, and what the future will hold there. But ultimately, we need to uh, really get the idea of polarization under control, because I mean, most people, at least I don't know, maybe you could attest to this too, but I feel like most people are pretty balanced, and we just need people to listen to one another, and we can come to sound decisions even if we disagree on things. And right now, just sometimes it feels like the loudest voices in the room control everything, and I don't subscribe to that ideology personally.
Yeah, I don't either. Not at all. I think these are all big problems that you're mentioning. I think figuring out a way to keep the recycling loop for some of these rare earth metals like these lithium ion cells. I think that's a problem that is definitely ripe for some smart person to figure out how you keep that loop ever going, and so you can reuse a lot of those materials, not having to remine them. I think that's a good direction to go in general. Um, and I think a local community that has a like a really really well planned electrical grid where drivers
Absolutely.
can they can choose their fuel. I mean, they can choose gasoline, or they can also have an EV, and it can operate an EV. It can definitely lend itself to reducing local pollution. Um, if a greater percentage of the drivers are driving EVs, I mean it's inarguable. It definitely reduces some of the local particulate, matter in the air. So
Exactly. And I mean, another aspect of that is just figuring out infrastructure. I mean, part of the issue with EVs is that there's not enough charging stations nationally.
yep, yep,
Like, for example, if I wanted to go see my family in Ohio, going through West Virginia, there's no charging stations. There's
yeah,
so there's not much incentive to take an EV, or even with public transit. Part of the thing about public transit is that it has to be convenient. If it's inconvenient, people are just going to stick with their cars.
yeah,
Like, when I lived in Germany, if you took a train, you usually got there faster than going by car, or at least around the same time. So more people are inclined to take it. But here, I mean, taking a bus or a train, like if I wanted to get to DC, I could drive there and get there maybe in 30, 40 minutes, depending on traffic. Or I could take a bus and a train and get there in like 2 hours.
I know, I know. Man, the train system in Germany is so crazy. It's so
So,
good.
it's so good. And, part of that's infrastructure. They planned for it. And
Yeah,
I don't know if we can kind of backtrack and fix it up. I think we're trying to, uh, but I think we need to start planning out infrastructure like well in advance and see what we can do next to get caught up. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, man, those train systems in Germany, man, it's
yeah.
boggling.
They're nice.
It's so nice.
Yeah, they're so modern. I really like the trains that originate from Stuttgart and kind of go in
Oh,
that section of the country, but they're all really good too, though. I mean, Munich and
yeah. I
they're
mean,
all
if you
solid.
and I was talking with my partner about this the other day because she's from New York area, and even New York, their subway system, it makes more sense for people to take the subway than to drive on the street,
Yeah,
and it actually becomes a cultural thing for public transit, which is fun. So
I know it. But yeah, I mean, so where else can people connect with you? I want to be respectful of your time, but also give people a way to. I'll definitely put your website on here. Um, Social media. I think you're fairly easy to find on social media too. Are there ones that you prefer? Are there,
I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Nextdoor if people use Nextdoor. I
cool,
usually just
cool.
use Nextdoor to track news. I'm not a big Twitter/X person.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm on there, but I don't post, or I just use it for news.
yeah. I hear you.
But yeah, I mean, those are my main platforms. And I mean, ultimately, shoot me a text, give me a call, email me, I'll respond. Uh,
Cool.
yeah, I just try to be an open resource for people.
Oh, right on. Well, feel free to stay on for a second, but yeah, hang on one second.